Life as I knew it was good. I had it all figured out, or so I thought. The days were filled with routine and predictability, and my ambitions were focused on the things that mattered most in the moment. My job, my friends, and the thrill of living in the here and now. My career was soaring. I had just been promoted to a foreman at a local construction company, and the paycheck was better than ever. My friends and I spent our nights out, laughing and enjoying life to its fullest, never worrying about the consequences of living in the present. That summer, everything seemed perfect. The sun always felt a little warmer, and the air a little lighter. I had plans, big plans. I wanted to buy a house, maybe even start my own business. But faith, eternity, those were the things that didn't matter to me. They seemed so far off, so distant. I believed in what I could see and touch, not in something abstract. I never questioned the world around me, never wondered what lay beyond the surface. I remember the day clearly. It was a regular afternoon, just like any other. The sun blazed in the sky as I drove home from work, tired but content. The heat was unbearable, and I rolled down the window, letting the hot wind rush into the car. I cranked the radio up, letting the music drown out any thoughts. I wasn't paying attention to the road as I should have been. I just wanted to get home, to relax, to let the day slip away. And then it happened. The sound of screeching tires. A blinding flash of headlights. In that instant, my world was torn apart. The deafening crash as metal twisted, my body thrown forward, and everything around me shattered into chaos. The moment was a blur, but one thing was clear. It was the last thing I would remember before everything went dark. I didn't wake up in a hospital bed. I didn't feel the pain that I should have. I didn't even realize at first that I had died. There was nothing, endless void. A deep, silent darkness that stretched out in every direction. I wasn't scared, not yet. I wasn't even sure where I was. I tried to move, but I had no body, no weight, no sense of direction. And then the silence was broken. Whispers. At first, they were distant, almost imperceptible, but as the seconds passed, they grew louder. Multiple voices, overlapping, murmuring in a language I didn't understand. The more I listened, the more I realized these voices weren't human. They were something else, something beyond what I could comprehend. Out of the darkness, a voice boomed, a voice so powerful that it shook the very air around me. "Stop," it commanded. And just like that, the whispers ceased. The darkness around me recoiled, and in its place, a light appeared. But this wasn't just any light. It wasn't an ordinary beam of brightness. It was alive. It moved, it breathed, and it carried a force so pure, so immense, that I could not comprehend it. Out of that light, a figure stepped forward. The moment I saw him, I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, who he was. Jesus. I had never given much thought to what Jesus might look like, but in that moment, I understood why people fell to their knees in his presence. His eyes were pools of eternity, reflecting not just love, but sorrow, justice, and mercy all at once. There was no need for words. His gaze alone was enough to shake me to my core. He didn't speak right away. He simply looked at me, as if he was seeing into the very depths of my soul. And in that gaze, I trembled. Then, finally, he spoke. "Do you know why you are here?" His voice was gentle, yet commanding. The question echoed in my mind, and for a moment, I didn't know how to respond. The words escaped me, trapped somewhere deep inside. And then everything changed. Without warning, the floodgates opened. My life, my entire existence, flashed before me. It wasn't just a recollection of memories. It was as if I was reliving every single moment, feeling each decision, each action, each missed opportunity. I felt the weight of every choice I had made. I felt the hurt I had caused, the lives I had impacted, the countless times I had turned my back on the truth. Tears filled my eyes. I had been guilty of so much, but Jesus didn't show me this to condemn me. He showed me the reality I had refused to face. But there was more. As I stood there, overwhelmed by the weight of it all, something shifted. The light dimmed, and then I wasn't standing in front of Jesus anymore. I was somewhere else, somewhere I didn't understand. What I saw in that place, in that moment would forever change everything. If you're watching this right now, I want to thank you for being part of this journey. If you made it this far, I would love to hear from you. Comment below with your name and the city you're watching from, and we'll give you a special shout out in the next video. Imagine being mentioned, having your name recognized by thousands of people. It's a chance to have a moment of fame and be part of this growing community. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. By joining our community, you're not just supporting the channel, but becoming part of something bigger, a family of believers who share the same vision. The light around me was all-encompassing, a presence so vast that I felt as if I were standing in the very center of the universe, held in the grasp of something beyond comprehension. I wasn't sure if I could move, if I could speak. The world I had once known, with its sounds, colors, and familiar smells, had faded into something distant, something unimportant. But the moment the vision began, I felt the weight of it. It was as if I could see into the very fabric of existence itself. There was a vastness that defied everything I had ever understood. The scope of the universe, of time itself, stretched before me like not endless expanse. And then the images began. I saw the earth, our world, through a lens I had never known. I saw the people, the places, the cities, but there was something wrong. The streets were dark, the sky thick with clouds that seemed to choke the sunlight. Fires burned in the distance, consuming entire neighborhoods. People ran, desperate, as if they were fleeing from something. The air felt heavy, burdened with fear and uncertainty. I could feel the chaos, the confusion that gripped everyone. The world was unraveling, and the more I looked, the more I realized this wasn't just a nightmare. It was a reality that was unfolding right before my eyes. A future that was already taking shape. There was a profound sadness in my heart as I watched. I could see the people, helpless, stumbling through the darkness. They didn't know what was coming, didn't know how close they were to the edge. They were unaware of the danger, of the forces that had already begun to take hold. But there was something worse, a deeper layer of darkness. It wasn't just the physical devastation. It was something invisible, something sinister, creeping beneath the surface, a force that had already begun to control everything. It was in the way people spoke, the way they acted. It was in their eyes, hollow, empty, as if they were no longer fully alive. And then I saw them, the leaders, the ones who spoke of peace, of unity, of a new world order. They promised safety, progress. But behind the smiles, behind the polished speeches, there was a darkness that could not be hidden. They were figures of power, yet they were controlled, puppets in a larger game that I couldn't yet understand. The vision shifted, and I saw people being marked. At first, it seemed like something insignificant. A simple scan, a symbol stamped on their hands and foreheads. But I knew what it meant. I saw their souls dimming. I felt it. The moment they accepted the mark, they were no longer free. Their will was no longer their own. They had chosen a path, and it was a path that led them away from everything good. This is what is coming. I heard a voice say. The words rang in my mind like a warning bell. The choice was coming, and many would choose wrongly. I saw the churches, empty, places once filled with people who sought God, now abandoned. But it wasn't because people had lost their faith. No, they still believed. But their beliefs had been twisted, corrupted. They had embraced a version of Christianity that was easy, comfortable. It no longer held the truth. The faith had been diluted, weakened, and it left them vulnerable. I saw preachers, once men of conviction, now leading their followers into deception. I saw Christians who mocked those who still clung to the truth. The world had turned, and the faith that had once been so vibrant was now barely a shadow of what it had been. Tears filled my eyes as I watched. Jesus, why are you showing me this? What can I do? I asked in desperation. His gaze met mine, filled with both sorrow and love. Because the time is short, and I am still calling to them, he said softly. I felt the weight of his words, and I knew, deep within me, that something had to be done. There was a mission I had to fulfill, a mission that was not just about warning the world, but waking them up before it was too late. The vision shifted once more, and I saw something else. I saw true believers. They were being persecuted, hunted, and rejected. They were forced into hiding, not just by the world, but by those who had once been their brothers and sisters in Christ. The very people who should have supported them were now turning against them. Yet, in the midst of it all, these believers stood firm. They did not back down. They did not waver. They stood in the fire, unafraid, because they knew the truth. They had been prepared. And I knew, deep within me, that this was what I had to be prepared for. The light around me dimmed, and I found myself back in the presence of Jesus. I was shaken, my heart pounding in my chest. I looked at him, and he looked at me. There was no need for words. I knew what I had to do as the vision faded. I found myself back in my own reality, no longer in the presence of Jesus, but still holding on to what he had shown me. I knew I had been given a second chance, not just to live, but to warn others. But the path ahead would not be easy. Many would not listen. Many would mock and reject me. But for those who would hear, I had to speak. I couldn't stop thinking about the vision. It replayed in my mind constantly, like a film that wouldn't stop running, each scene more vivid than the last. I couldn't escape it, nor did I want to. The images of a world falling apart, of deception creeping into every corner, of believers being hunted, all of it haunted me. But more than that, the words of Jesus echoed in my ears, clear as day. The time is short. There were moments, though, when I would try to push it all away. I would busy myself with mundane tasks, try to focus on work or conversation, anything to distract me from the weight of what I had seen. But it never worked. It was like an urgent whisper that refused to be silenced. I had been given a purpose, one that I couldn't ignore, and deep down, I knew that I had to act. At first, I didn't know where to start. How could I warn others about something so massive, so beyond what any of us were prepared for? How could I explain the unexplainable? The task seemed impossible, but in my heart, I knew that I had no choice. The vision had been shown to me for a reason, and now it was my responsibility to share it, to prepare others. I remember the first time I spoke publicly about it. It was at my church. My mother had been praying for years, and she convinced the pastor to allow me to share my testimony. I had no idea what to expect, no idea how people would react. As I stood in front of the congregation, I could feel the weight of their gazes. Some faces were familiar, some were strangers, but they all shared one thing: doubt. I could see it in their eyes, the skepticism. I could almost hear their thoughts. This doesn't make sense. How could this be real? But I had no choice. I had to speak. I took a deep breath and began to share what had happened, what I had seen. The accident, the darkness, the light, Jesus. I told them about the terrifying vision of the world's destruction, the deception that was already taking root, and the coming choice that would decide the fate of humanity. As the words left my mouth, I watched their reactions, some eyes wide with fear, others narrowing in disbelief. Some had tears, others shifted uncomfortably in their seats. The room was heavy, like the air itself was thick with something invisible. When I finished, there was a long silence. The pastor stood up, his face pale, and cleared his throat. "If this is true," he said, his voice trembling, "then we have no time to waste." That was when I realized not everyone would believe me. Not everyone would understand. But some would. And for them, I had to keep speaking. I spent the next few weeks doing exactly that. I spoke at youth groups, led Bible studies, and shared my testimony whenever and wherever I could. Some people listened. Some didn't. Some were moved by the urgency in my voice. Others mocked me, accused me of seeking attention. There were days when I wanted to give up, when the weight of the rejection felt too heavy to bear. But each time, I remembered the vision, the faces of those who would not listen, the faces of those who would choose the wrong path. I couldn't let that happen. I couldn't sit idly by while people walked toward the edge, unaware of the cliff ahead. One day, I was invited to speak at a university group. The students were polite, but I could tell they were skeptical. I shared my story, just as I had done before, but this time, something felt different. The weight of the room felt heavier. As I finished, a young man approached me. His expression was unreadable. "I want to believe you," he said, his voice quiet. "But if what you're saying is true, then almost everything I've ever believed is a lie." That's hard to accept. I nodded, understanding more than he knew. I know it's hard, I said, my voice low, but what if it's not a lie? What if Jesus really is coming soon? What if the choice you make today decides your eternity? He swallowed hard, looking away. I don't know. I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small Bible, placed it in his hands. Start here, I said, and ask God to show you the truth. I never saw that young man again, but I think about him often. I pray that he made the right choice, that he found the truth that I had been shown. As the weeks turned into months, I found myself in a constant battle, not just with others, but with myself. The doubt would creep in. The questions would rise. Was I really supposed to be doing this? Was this all just some kind of hallucination, a product of the trauma I had experienced? But then I would remember. I would remember the pit, the abyss where the lost souls cried out. I would remember the darkness, the hopelessness that they had faced. I would remember the faces of those who were still living, still walking through life, unaware of what was coming. And I knew that I couldn't stop. I couldn't turn away from the mission I had been given. The time was short, and there were people out there who needed to hear this message before it was too late. The weight of the mission continued to settle on my shoulders, growing heavier with each passing day. I had been given a glimpse into something vast, something terrifying, and I couldn't unsee it. But every time I felt the pull of doubt, I would remember the faces of those who were still in the dark, those who hadn't heard the warning, and I knew that I had to keep going. But even as I pressed forward, the world around me seemed to be changing in ways I couldn't ignore. People were waking up in a way, but they were waking up to a twisted version of reality. Everywhere I went, I saw signs of confusion, of spiritual apathy, and it broke my heart. I went to a few more churches to speak about the vision, to share the message that had been entrusted to me. Some welcomed me with open arms, eager to hear the truth, but others were skeptical. I could see it in their eyes. They wanted to believe, but they couldn't quite grasp what I was saying. It was too much, too overwhelming. And then there were those who dismissed me completely. They didn't even want to hear it. They were comfortable in their beliefs, and the idea that anything could threaten that comfort was unthinkable. But there was one thing that kept me going, the call to warn. I couldn't stop. I couldn't give up. I started speaking at smaller gatherings, wherever I could find people who were open to hearing the truth. Youth groups, Bible studies, any space that would let me share what I'd seen. And it was there in those intimate settings that I found the most receptive hearts. It was there that I could see the change beginning to take place. People were starting to understand. They were starting to feel the urgency, just as I had. One evening, I was invited to speak at a community center. It wasn't a large crowd, but the faces I saw were filled with hope, uncertainty, and curiosity. I knew this was my chance to reach them, to truly make an impact. I shared the vision again, the truth that had been revealed to me, the world in chaos, the deception, the persecution, the mark. I told them everything. The weight of it was unbearable, but it had to be said. As I finished speaking, I watched the room fall into silence. Some were moved to tears, while others sat quietly, digesting the enormity of what I had just shared. One man stood up, his eyes full of emotion. "What do we do now?" he asked. "What can we do to prepare?" It was a question I had heard many times before, but this time it hit me harder. What could they do? What could any of us do? The answer was clear. Prepare your heart. I looked at the man, my heart heavy with the knowledge that many were still not ready for what was coming. "You must stand firm in your faith," I said, my voice steady. "You must build a foundation that can't be shaken, because when the storm comes, only those who are rooted in truth will stand." The room was quiet for a long moment, and I could feel the weight of the decision before them. I knew that many of them would face choices in the coming days, choices that would either bring them closer to God or push them further away. And I knew that I had to continue to speak, to share the truth no matter the cost. That night, I went home exhausted, but with a sense of peace. I knew that the seeds had been planted, but I also knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The world was changing and the darkness was rising. There was still much work to be done, and I had to be ready to face whatever came next. Thank you for being part of this journey with me. If you found yourself moved by this message and want to be a part of our growing community, I invite you to take a moment to comment your name and the city you're watching from below. In the next video, we'll be giving a special shout out to those who comment, and we'd love to include you. Imagine being recognized and having your name shared with thousands of people. It's a chance to feel truly seen, to feel that moment of recognition. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. By doing so, you're joining a community of believers who are standing firm in their faith, ready for what's to come. Let's keep going together. As I continued on this journey, I began to notice a growing sense of urgency around me. The more I spoke, the more I realized that time was slipping away. There was a divide that was growing wider and wider with each passing day, a division between those who were beginning to wake up and those who were still asleep. I could feel it, see it in the way people responded to my message. Some embraced it with open arms, eager to take a stand and prepare for the coming storm. But others rejected it outright, as if it were a figment of my imagination, a wild story that had no place in the reality they knew. The tension between these two groups began to grow. Those who were willing to listen, to take the warning seriously, were increasingly under attack. They were mocked, ridiculed, and in some cases, even persecuted. But even in the face of opposition, their faith remained unshaken. They stood firm, determined to walk the narrow path, no matter the cost. On the other side of the divide, the world continued to push forward, unaware of the approaching darkness. People were consumed with their daily lives, distracted by the fleeting pleasures of this world. They thought they had more time, that they could live life as they always had. But they didn't see the storm brewing on the horizon. They didn't see the deception that was slowly taking hold of their hearts and minds. I saw it everywhere I went. The media, the leaders, the voices of authority, they all seemed to be pushing a narrative that was at odds with the truth. They promised peace, safety, and prosperity, but I knew deep down that it was a lie. The more they spoke, the more I could hear the subtle manipulation in their words. They were leading people down a path that would ultimately bring them to destruction. But even as I saw the divide grow, I couldn't help but feel a sense of hope. There were still people who were waking up, who were beginning to see the truth for what it was. They were stepping out of the shadows, standing tall in their faith, and I knew that there was still time for them, time for all of us to make the right choice. One evening, I was invited to speak at a small gathering. The room was filled with people of all ages, some who had been following my journey from the beginning, and others who were just hearing about it for the first time. As I spoke, I could see the wheels turning in their minds. They were processing the information, wrestling with it, trying to make sense of what I was saying. And then, something unexpected happened. A woman stood up. She was older, with silver hair and a kind face, but there was a fire in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. "I've been listening to your story," she said, her voice steady. "And I've come to realize that we've been living in denial. We've ignored the warning signs. We've turned a blind eye to the truth. But now, we can't afford to wait any longer. It's time to act." Her words hit me like a wave. I knew that this was the moment when everything changed. This wasn't just about one person's mission anymore. This was about all of us coming together to stand firm in the truth, to speak out against the lies that were threatening to take over. And in that moment, I understood the mission was bigger than just me. It was about all of us working together to wake up the world before it was too late. The room erupted in applause, and I could see the fire in their hearts, the determination to stand firm. It was a moment of unity, of collective resolve, and I knew that we were on the right path. But even as I felt that hope, I knew that the road ahead would not be easy. The divide would only grow wider. The persecution would intensify, and the choice would become even clearer. As the days passed, I found myself increasingly drawn to the mission, even though the road ahead seemed steeper with each step. The more I spoke, the more I realized that this was not just a message to be shared, but a battle to be fought. The world was changing, and the line between truth and deception was becoming more and more blurred. It was hard to keep my focus at times. The weight of what I had seen, the urgency in my heart, all of it pressed on me like unrelenting force. I would wake up each day with a sense of purpose, but the challenges were growing. People were waking up, yes, but many were still reluctant to take action. They were afraid of the unknown, afraid of the cost of standing up for the truth. But I couldn't stop. I couldn't let fear dictate what I did next. The world, however, was continuing its path. The darkness was spreading. It wasn't just in the chaos of the world outside, but in the hearts of people who had once held on to the light. I saw in the way people were choosing comfort over conviction, compromise over truth. I saw churches that had once been filled with passionate believers now empty, their doors closed to those who truly sought God. The faith that had once been a powerful force was now a shadow of what it had been. And I knew that it wasn't just the world that was lost, it was the church too. But even in the midst of this, I saw signs of hope. There were still people scattered across the world who were standing firm. They were holding on to their faith, unwilling to let go, no matter the cost. And it was these people, these true believers, who kept me going. One day, as I was walking through the streets of the city, I saw a small group of people gathered in a park. They were praying, their heads bowed, their hands lifted up in worship. I paused for a moment, watching them, and something in my heart stirred. It was a reminder that, despite everything, there were still those who would stand firm, who would keep fighting for the truth. I walked over to them, and as I approached, one of the women turned to me. "You look troubled," she said, her voice gentle. "What's on your heart?" I hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I've seen the future," I said, my voice heavy with the weight of the truth. "I've seen what's coming, and I don't know how to prepare the world for it." She smiled softly. "You don't have to do it alone," she said. "We're all in this together." And in that moment, something clicked. I wasn't alone. This mission, this battle, it wasn't just mine. It was ours. It was a collective effort, a movement of believers who would stand together and fight for what was right. The burden I had carried for so long suddenly felt a little lighter, knowing that I wasn't in this alone. We began to pray together, and as we did, I felt a deep sense of peace wash over me. It was as if the weight of the world had been lifted. Even if only for a moment, I knew that the road ahead would still be difficult. But I also knew that, with the strength of community behind me, I could face whatever was to come. As we finished praying, I looked around at the faces of those who had gathered. Each one was a light in the darkness, a beacon of hope. I realized that this was a turning point. This was where things would change. The world may have been growing darker, but the light of truth would continue to shine, no matter how small it seemed. And with that realization, I knew what I had to do. I had to keep speaking, keep warning, keep sharing the truth, no matter the cost, no matter the opposition. I couldn't stop. The world needed to hear the message, and I was just one voice among many, speaking out for what was right. Thank you for being here with us on this journey. We are so grateful to have you as part of this growing community. If you feel moved by this message and want to continue supporting what we're doing, I invite you to take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support means the world to us. We don't make any money doing this. We do it because we believe in the message, and we're passionate about sharing it with you. Every like and subscription helps us reach more people and spread the truth far and wide. Your participation makes a huge difference. So please consider subscribing and being part of this community as we continue to walk this path together. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. The mission I had been given became more clear with each passing day, and the weight of it grew heavier. The world was changing, and I could see it, feel it, in every corner of life. The deception, the complacency, the apathy, everything was falling into place, just as I had seen in the vision. But despite the growing darkness, there was still hope. There were still people who were waking up, still people who were ready to stand firm in their faith. I had seen them in the small groups, in the communities, in the churches that hadn't closed their doors. There were those who still believed, who were ready to fight for the truth. And yet, as I looked around, I could feel the time slipping away. The choice was coming, and the urgency of it weighed on my heart. The truth had been revealed to me, and I knew that it was not just a message for me to keep. It was something that had to be shared with the world. The decision would be made soon. People would either choose the truth, or they would be lost in the lies. I had warned them. I had spoken the words, shared the vision, But I knew that it wasn't enough. People had to be prepared, not just with knowledge, but with the strength to stand firm when the time came. The storm was coming, and those who weren't ready would be swept away. But for those who stood firm, who held fast to the truth, there would be victory. I couldn't stop now. The message had to continue, and I had to keep speaking. I couldn't let fear, doubt, or even rejection stop me. The mission was too important. The choice was too great. I had to do everything I could to wake people up, to help them see the truth before it was too late. And as I stood there, looking out at the world around me, I knew that this was only the beginning. The choice was coming, and it would change everything. Thank you for being part of this journey. I believe this message has touched your heart, and I want to encourage you to continue seeking the truth. If you feel moved by this message and want to keep going on this journey with us, I invite you to click on the next video that's appearing on your screen. It will be just as revealing in your life, and it's something you won't want to miss. Before you go, take a moment to give this video a like and leave a comment saying Amen. By doing so, you're declaring your agreement, your readiness, and your desire to continue being blessed. It's a way to keep your heart open to the truth and to stay on this path with us. Let's keep standing strong together. Let's keep this movement going, and may you continue to be blessed as we walk this journey of truth.